Melbourne, right? The way they've just subtly adjusted their football without Jerome, you know, you can see that Harry has become the centrepiece of their football team. And geez, he's playing good football. He's playing halfback.
Yeah, I like two parts to it. Was a couple of weeks against the Roosters. No Pappenhausen, no Munster, and Hughes goes down in that game. All he basically said, like, oh, everyone just pile in on the ruck. When it's a blown ruck, you become support runners, not ball players. And he set up the victory with that performance. And then it was obvious from word go the other night that he was out and running. He didn't wait for the game to get fatigue. He got out and he's being crafty about it. And we've seen De Silva, telling De Silva overplay their hand at dummy half. Harry Grant's one of the few that doesn't overplay his hand. Sometimes you bounce out left and right, but what it does, it encourages Tyron Wishart and Munster to become ball runners.
It does.
As opposed to sitting back and waiting for the long pass. Once he moves, both those halves go from, I'm not worried about the outside, I'm now running into a hole. And once, Stefano, King, once there's a little bit of ruck speed, he's by far the best to take advantage of Harry Grant.
And could talk about Harry Grant and number 9s and how that role has evolved and continues to evolve. It's worthwhile saying this. To give the history of that position, the dummy half, the hooker position, give the history, was the sole role of the dummy half was to win the scrum. Get the feet across and win the scrum. That's what they were judged on.
60s, 70s.
60s, 70s and into the 80s, right? Into the 80s. My first off-season at Newcastle Knights, which was 1989, is that, mate, the hooker was still competing for the ball. They practiced scrums, competing for the, for the loose head. Did I do
you get in a scrum and do it?
Yeah, sure. No, well,
you competed in a couple?
Well, it's funny, Coops, because what happened was, I still remember going into that 1990 season, that 89 pre-season, and Alan McMahon come forward and said, right, we're going to change something, right? From now on, our dummy halves are going to be moving dummy halves, because your role for the hooker in the old days in dummy half was just fire it off the ground. Don't stand, just straight off the ground and let the ball go. Benny Elias changed everything, and suddenly they started to go, righto, let's get the 9 operating as a moving dummy half, and what we're going to do, we're going to double down. We're actually going to turn our halves, a number of our halves, into hookers.
So Benny was the original?
Benny was the original. Yep. In my opinion, he was the first one to really sort of be getting out of dummy half and playing, because Warren Ryan says he was our halfback. He and Blocker were their halfbacks because they had Gary Freeman and Mick Neal, who were more runners and tenacious competitors.
And then off the back of Benny, some halfbacks were being picked at number 9 in rep football, right? Because they wanted that creativity and craft.
You get the creativity. It was never a requirement of dummy half. And then after Benny, you had the Walters brothers, so Steve Walters, right? So Steve was very different to Benny in the fact that Boxhead was all about power, getting out and his strength, and he had a very strong running game. His brother Kerrod was different to Steve again. Kerrod, if I had to compare him to anyone, I'd say he wasn't as express as Damien Cook, but like this.
You're telling me that Kerrod was a beach sprinter?
Really
good.
Unbelievable on sand. But this is what he did. He would get out, and because Alf and his brother Kev played flat, whenever Kerrod would get the ball and get up and go, they just turned into ball runners, like we were saying before about Harry Grant.
But the speed at which Kerrod got out was a point of difference, right?
It was.
He was, Benny at the time would come out with a little bit of craft and deception. A bit like David Cook. When he went, he went.
He went.
Yeah, and everyone else had to follow,
And then you had Danny Medeiros. Now, when you talk about guys, Danny came to Newcastle out of the Australian schoolboy as a talented young playmaker who just got weighed down by the responsibility of having to push the side around the park.
So he was a 7, Danny?
He was a 7. He came as a 7 or a 6. They tried, you know what? They tried to play him everywhere. They tried him in the centres. They tried him at fullback. They put him at 13 for a little bit. He could never find his spot. And we went into a semi-final once and we had a lot of injuries, and Malcolm really said, let's just throw the young bloke in there, see what he does. And he found his position because get out of dummy half and play, but he didn't have to steer the side around the park.
And then Cameron Smith took it to another level, right?
And then you'll meet Cameron, of you blokes. And the thing about it was, Coops, I can imagine that when you transitioned into being a halfback, to have a 9 alongside you who could get out and play a little bit of half itself, what a difference it makes.
I think if we're sort of giving advice to any young dummy half coming through and watching clips of Medeiros and Smith, the one consistent thing they do is they hold the ball in 2 hands. You hold the ball in 2 hands and think it's a magic wand, and defenders stop. Like when Cameron Smith used to get out and throw a pass or a kick, the pause and deception he had stopped defenders, and that was the opportunity he did. But he couldn't stop if he had it in one hand.
Yeah,
he stopped because he put it out there and people looked at it and they froze, and that was the pass that he threw or the kick that he did.
On Harry, talking about how Melbourne have centralised their attack, and it was really interesting watching the other night. And it was their best night performance. I've had people say to me, "Oh, mate, you're always talking about night performance today." Night football is very, very different. It's a different style of football you play. And the adjustment Melbourne made the other night, with not having Jerome there, the way they went back to really centralising, and the more momentum created, the straighter they play. I think this is a really good example where suddenly gets on the front and you see them it perhaps drills through the middle, all through the middle, back through the middle. Everything gets going through the middle, winning the speed of the ruck, fast play of the ball. Don't worry, the more momentum we've got, the straighter we're going to just keep playing.
And it's a good sign if you're a Storm fan, because playing the Broncos, historically I know this through Craig Bellamy, when he gets to this time of year, he wants to start ironing out the creases and start playing their best football. And they didn't finesse it. They didn't go round. They just went through the front door and Harry Grant became the best player. So they are sharpening their sword for September because of the way they're starting to fine-tune their performances.